everybody. I'm sure you will be happy to exchange with us at the end of this very intense meeting. And today we aim to go back on the content of the previous days, and with an overview, but at the more stratospheric level. So we are three for speaking about that to tackle with different points. And first, Larry and also Sébastien will help us today. So I insist that it is a very interactive approach. So please take your microphone.
Okay, so if we can get the PowerPoint up, we thought we would organize the discussion sort of pulling out of aspects of the meeting and the workshops. And so this will be, this is sort of our organization that we've spent weeks putting together this morning. So the first is a general topic area, so adapting TPE, bringing best practices to different situations and countries, and that will include the response to the out-of-the-box TPE. Then how broad should the reach be with both TPE and what I called AEE, atopic eczema education, which gets beyond just the TPE, but how broad should our reach be to the world of eczema or the world outside of eczema? Integration and alliance and amongst our professionals, and then integration with patients, particularly taking a look at the interactive devices, the new PO SCORAD tool, eczema-wise, how does that relate to how we interact with our patients? And then adapting tools with new treatments. And then the last is, this was, the meeting was dedicated to looking at patient-centered care, but Sebastian wondered, should there be a balanced center? how we approach that, and a way to look at the major learnings from the meeting. And I'll apologize in advance that I'm one of the people who will be leaving about 2/3 of the way through this session in order to make the airport, and I apologize for that. So Sebastian, do you want to, here I'll take, do you want to start us off with this?
Yeah. I think the interesting thing after a meeting like that is just to land a little bit and to ask ourselves what kind of general ideas we learned during this meeting, and what kind of practical ideas that we could get back, we could take home for our teams. So in terms of adapting TPE, the thing that I've retained from this meeting is that, okay, we have, for some of them, very classical, structured TPE programs in hospital, mainly hospital settings, and that works for severe patients, but we reach a minority of all the patients. So we need new ways of developing education, new size, and we need more compact education. I agree with Andreas when he said that compact education is really needed, but there is an open. It's an open question. What kind of compact education do we need, and what sort of implementation do we need to do? Collective session, but short collective session. Do we have to do online TPU sessions? what are the disadvantages or the advantages of doing that. That things that we would like to share with you. So maybe you can take the voice and take the microphone to share. It's an open session. It's for you also to share ideas and feeling after these meetings. It's not a structured session, so please take the microphone and share ideas with us.
So Michelle Raymond, before she left, sent an email off this morning, and she proposed the MVP, the minimal viable product, which is, what's the least amount you can do. But you have to be clear, right? We know there's a tension between the response that patients have with the time that you give them. Whatever it is, whether it be in the social circumstances, the incredible camp programs that we saw, you can't get around that versus what's the effectiveness of a shorter educational intervention. So, yeah.
And maybe also which tool we will use to validate this compact. Because
well, Sebastian made us very depressed with showing us how, if you measure many of the interventions, they may not show because our parallel controls are so much better. I've said if we showed, I think if you tested this in a primary care setting, where you did an intervention of a compact education, you'd probably be very easy to show the changes in outcome as compared to specialist centers where our standard is so high, as Sebastian brought up.
But for those, maybe to launch the discussion, for those who didn't have a structured program, what would you like to do in the future when you come back home? Would you like to start with a structured program with collective session like 2 hours plus 2 hours plus 2 hours? Or would you like to launch a compact education like 1 hour or 2 hours? Or what do you think it's feasible? What do you think it's efficient in your point of view?
Yeah. We have microphones to go around.
2 microphones here.
Good.
Thank you very much. I think it has been very inspiring to hear about the different models. We always had a compact model, and I think it's because the dermatologists use their evenings to do that, and we cannot afford to go every week. But I think in my next compact model, I would like to leave more space for patients to talk to each other, or parents to talk to each other. I think they sometimes can do that in the Eczema Association, but we don't have such a big tradition for people like sharing on a personal basis. So I think that would inspire me that they need to talk to other parents who feel the same, and maybe like make the coffee break longer, just a small idea. But I think it's nice for the patients and the parents to know they are not alone in the world with this difficult problem with eczema.
And do you think this kind of sharing process could be done online, on collective session online?
I'm sure they do it all the time, but I think also it would be, to some extent, be nice to meet people in person. Maybe it's because I'm old and I like personal contact better than the internet, but I think it's also something valuable to meet people in person.
Okay.
Andreas, some comments?
When I started with patient education, I would do what we all do when we are residents. We would try to listen carefully to what our teachers tell us. That's what we did when we would build up the German model. Within time, I realized that part of it may not be needed that urgently, and I tried to remove those parts from the program that could be done in other places or by other means, which is patients talking with one another. They can also do in their patient group. We encourage them to do. It's nice to supervise them while they do, but it's not 100% needed. So we were happy to cut down our program to something that seems feasible. And when we would look if it is effective, we were astonished how effective it is. So from becoming someone who has always been trained to look for potholes, to look if there is anything that we should doubt, I'm now very happy with the compact education model. Also because the data is so good that supports its use. That's why I showed them yesterday.
Okay. Christian?
Yeah, one of the things that it was actually a combination of what you said, Sebastian, and what Andreas said in his session. I may be paraphrasing you now, Sebastian, but you said something about the patients also needed to learn how we were thinking and learn and understand us. And having these very compact sessions, I work the same place as Mette. One thing I've realized when I've been doing this is that if I can sort of bring the understanding that I have of this disease, you know, with respect to the patients, they might understand it in a different way that I do, but bringing my understanding of this disease to them will actually make it much more easier for them to understand why am I using corticosteroids, why am I going to systemics now, and a lot of the more practical things, I think it's nice to demonstrate a few things during these sessions, but a lot of the things can actually be seen on YouTube. You can have videos, you can have small things where they can pick up these different kind of techniques. But if they understand in the same way as I do, the communications over the next couple of consultations will be much easier, because they'll say, oh, he's now turning to a stronger corticosteroids, or now he wants to do wet rabbits because I have lignified eczema. He told me that. So I think that what I will do, inspired by you, is to try to much more bring the patients an understanding of our perception of the disease.
Okay. No, you want to ask a question or react here?
No, when the pandemic, after many years of doing this TPE with patients, and when the pandemic came, we turned to internet, and we did lots of, they weren't similar because we couldn't interact that way, because we didn't do Zooms, because it would be really a mess. So it was just one of us talking to the patients, giving like the talk we would have done. And it was like that. In that way, we were able to reach many patients, and not only the severe ones, but also the mild ones. And those do benefit a lot. We don't always reach them with this kind of education, but they also benefit a lot with the TPE. And we were able to turn online, and at least in Argentina, it's a very big country, so not all they were willing to be able to do that, to get this on online sessions, and so we are going to keep them. Of course, it's not the same to be able to be in person, and because it's absolutely different. But keeping these online sessions is one of the things we're going to do.
I think in pediatrics, right, families really like the online option, and there's some evidence that it can be as powerful, but obviously the collection of a set of children to come into the office, it's easy for them to get around that.
Danielle?
I agree with all that has been said. I also feel that compact TPE will be much easier to deliver, but I think it should be also personalized. I think that patient would be, or parents would be more receptive if somehow it was more personalized, as was said. It's not one suit fits all. I mean, you could have one compact addressing boys, addressing girls, addressing milder, more moderate, more severe, different age group. It still could be compact, but more personalized. And also, I think that in the TPE, there should be a good place for a parent's voice and patients' children's voices.
I have Christine. Christine there. Oh, sorry, Christian. Sorry.
Thank you. I just, from a patient association point of view, I think my reflections from the meeting were how important the education is. And in the UK, we don't really have any kind of formalised education. So it's made me think about how, as a patient organisation, we could bring some kind of compact training to patients, and maybe involving, obviously, dermatologists and maybe dermatology nurses. But I think the other thing for me from this meeting was, hearing from patients and also hearing about the different approaches. For example, Jean-Marc, the importance of looking at the wider picture of well-being for the patient, and maybe looking at what motivates the patient beyond the eczema, to try and encourage them to also look after their skin if they're maybe feeling better overall. And I think I'm going to take that away and think about how we can adapt that approach in our patient association, and try and look at the bigger picture and see how we can make changes for the overall well-being of the patients that we support.
Yeah.
I totally agree with everything was said about the needs patients have to exchange between peers. Also the need to understand the doctor point of view, because every problems you have in TPA program, like low adherence to treatment or whatever, you cannot solve it without involving patients. And I really advocate for ourselves now, but I feel like the more you involve patients building your programs, not only at the end, like cherry on the cake, but at every step of the way, you can bring new highlights to the programs, TPA programs, like out-of-the-box TPA, like we saw with Jean-Marc or whatever. But this is very useful because some of eczema patients never go to hospitals, never want to go to meeting around their disease. Even if they want to go better, they don't trust doctors anymore, and the link is broken. And I think the only way to create this link is to get this precious information out of hospital. And maybe digital can be a form, but there are many forms, and involving patient can be really rich to think of the different ways you can do that.
Christian?
Yeah, it was just a very concrete suggestions. If we could have, for example, on the foundation's homepage or something like that, if anybody has instructional videos that they want to share and are able to share, there might be copyright problems, then it would be great if we could go and use them. I think everything would be very nice to use.
You mean an example of a
for example,
education?
how to do wet wrap, how to do, for the patients, so that we can instruct them, so we can use them in our education.
Oh, yes, we have that. We have
you
that
have that already.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But probably, I think we have a lot of things like that into the website of the foundation. But the problem is, it's difficult to. A website is a huge department store, so it's not easy to find exactly what you need. So, one of our ideas is to use the new applet, Scholar applet, from Q&A questions. Directly obtain a link to this page, to this video, to this clip, and so on. Okay? That is really easy to do.
No, comment. What I found really wonderful of this meeting is that many of us do TPE, and each one of us has its own different way of doing it, and we've learned so much of that. But what I also found is that many of us do kind of the same, and we put lots of effort on it, and maybe it's already done. Maybe we can have a toolbox or somewhere we can gather all of the things that we are doing and share it together, so we don't have to, it's like sharing the videos, so we don't have to do a video, each one of us.
So Jean-Francois has been a leader trying to do that now for over a decade.
Yeah, we did that.
Even the name Open, the Open Group was the idea of openly sharing.
Yeah, but the question that I think for a decade we said that, and about sharing tools.
Yeah.
And there are things that have been done. But I think the point is when you are involved in developing a tool yourself, it's much more powerful because, yeah, you know, you imply, you put things that you believe in your tool, the way you manage patients, the way you interact with patients, and those beliefs that are yours are more powerful to interact with patients with your tools. I think it's key. Each of us have to develop their own tools. Maybe a small one. Some could be shared.
Yeah.
Some have to be. It's also a way to be creative and to invent new things.
We're maybe adapting something.
Yeah,
Already.
yeah.
We're not inventing anything. We all do TPE we've learned from someone. We've been adapting that.
Andreas?
Mauricio from Colombia.
Oh, sorry.
I want to do a relatively simple suggestion, and this is to encourage the foundation to provide material, and it must not be very sophisticated material like videos, just the print things would be enough, to provide in the native language. So for example, when we were traveling Madagascar and we would have neglected skin diseases, sometimes I have the impression that I would like to use much more material from the foundation if it would be available in German, but it is not. So in some way the German language still is a little a neglected language in the foundation. And I would be happy to contribute to changing this. Yes. But this would be a real good way. Yeah. Most of the younger patients, they have some English from the internet or they had French at school. But if it would be available in the native language, it would be easier for Switzerland, for Austria, and also for Germany. Maybe this is a relatively easy suggestion.
Thank you. We will send you the translation. You could help because we did the same process developing Piuscoran, for example, on the web, and we translated in 24 languages different, and in 2 steps. First is a professional step, and secondly an expert step. And you are the expert, so you validate or not, you comment, and we publish, okay?
Should we ask about out of the box, because we'll move on, but before we move on, you know, that was a broad set of ideas, some of them very intensive, but I was interested in how people reacted to that and if people had other ideas or responses.
Julie.
Hi, thank you. 2 things come to my mind. One, this is such a ripe topic for the increased collaboration between the physicians and the patient associations or the foundations. The idea that each hospital and each clinic and each setting is doing the same or different, it just seems ripe for collaboration. And one idea is I've had this dream that we have like Eczema University, right? And you have a series of a curriculum. And some of that, I mean, this is all digital. Nothing replaces in person, but we are understanding the challenges of that. But if there were a webinar or a video, it needs to be a patient with a physician. They do it together, right? And then you could, maybe you get a group of 10 people live, you watch the video, and then you have questions and answers, something like that. But there could be a series hosted on the foundation's website. You have to trust and view that credibility as your partner. Because I fear that the more you all, you know, each clinic does it themselves, we're not going to reach. If our objective is to reach more people and educate more people, we have to think a little bit differently.
Which brings us to the next slide, which is, I'll have a comment first. Okay, yeah.
Hi, I'm Camille. I'm here at the patient, but I did has a curriculum with a health coach. And actually, I launched a group of people with eczema a few years ago. And I've been lucky because I could share it with some doctors and patients engaged on the social network. And they were just looking not to be patient, like they wanted to see the eczema as a sexy thing, so almost, you know. They don't want to be categorized as patient because they never see themselves this way. And what I could see that really works, I offers like a 3-month program, which I co-create with some doctors as Jean-Marc, Magali Bourret-Boutaz, which are kind of different doctors we can see. And what was really interesting is that they talk about mostly of what we can see in the hospital, but because we were some group of 15, 12 persons, they could ask everything they want. And they just have a doctor sitting with them, mostly because it was close to COVID and everything, but they were just in the same position. And that changed everything. What really helps too, that they were connecting and having communities of people. And I remember these days, there were a girl just really feeling desperate about her skin. And because they could, her doctors, and feel confident with, they were all like really cheer this girl, like, oh, you should go to the pharmacy. And they were sharing knowledge. And so they were kind of an ambassador of what they could hear before with the doctors. And I think that was really powerful because months after, they are still talking together and they are still like really help themselves. And I think communities should be something that is really considered and has a sexy community, if I can say.
That's tremendous. We have a section where we're talking about alliance and alliance with patients, and I think sharing ideas. But Julie sort of brought me into our next slide, which is how broad should we reach with TPE, and not just TPE. I called it AEE, atopic eczema education, because it may not, if it's not directed to, you know, particular patients, it's broader, just to let people know about the field. And you know, we had some discussions about social media. I actually got up this morning and I thought to myself, TikTok, is it an alarm clock and I have to wake up and respond to it? Or is it an alarm clock I can continue to ignore? But the questions of how much do we need to be out there and in terms of educating the general populace about atopic dermatitis, especially with all the changes that are happening. And we still see patients who come to us, you know, they haven't seen a physician in 2 years, and there's 60% body surface area involvement. They've been hiding, so we still have to get patients out. So I wanted people's input on that, and then also, you know, web apps, and then directing how we direct our educational programs to medical personnel, and particularly an interest of mine is generalists and primary care, and then also sharing experiences in training the specialists. Maybe with primary care, Christian's still here. I know you've had some positive experiences with a program geared to generalists, and is that just on atopic derm? Is that for dermatology, and what's the history of that?
Well, that program is designed, it's really part of the agreement that general practitioners or family doctors have with the authorities, because they get paid from the authorities, right? And they're obliged to put away a sum of money every year for education. And this goes into a foundation called the Medical Personnel's Educational Foundation. And we have in that foundation also a committee that designs courses. And we have designed a general dermatology course, which is a 5-day course in which we teach general dermatology. Of course, atopic eczema is quite a large portion of that. And the experience here is, first of all, what I experienced when we started out with this, it's run for 10 years now. It's very popular because general practitioners don't really get that much training in dermatology, and that's really a pity because we asked them, I've just finished a survey among these, we asked them how much dermatology do you see, and they will answer about 10 to 20% of all consultations are concerned with dermatology. And since it was me who did the survey, I also specifically asked about atopic eczema. And we asked them, what is the most difficult thing? What do you fear the most as a general practitioner? And pigmented lesions were number 1, because they're all afraid of malignant melanoma. But atopic eczema was number 3. I can't really remember right now what number 2 was. but we also asked if you have to compare how complicated a consultation with an AD patient is compared to any other consultations with a child or with an adult, more than 60% would say that it was much more complicated because they have all of the questions about allergies and treatment and so on and so forth. So there really is a knowledge gap or a need, an unmet need among general practitioners. And we heard from the pharmacists that they were sometimes the number 1 that the patients see, but certainly the family doctor is also the one that they go to. And when teaching these, I actually also learned something because the patients that they see are very different from the patients that I see. Sure, but they still need some education on how to handle these. So I think that one of the very, very important places to target right now in education, both on AE, but then again also on dermatology in general, are the GPs, because they are really the backbone of how the patients meet the healthcare system.
I completely agree, and I would say, to add to you, thought that it is important to integrate pharmacists and GPs and dermatologists in a special area and specialists all together to learn, to be trained to a special disease like AD, just to avoid discrepancies in messages. And that's idea of bridging, of compacting all together the trainings are, I think, very important.
Yeah, and if I may, just another comment, because it just came into my mind. We talked about the corticophobia among pharmacists. It could be very interesting to do a study on corticophobia among GPs, because believe you me, it's there.
Yeah. I guess one question I have for our patients is whether did they have experiences with primary care that they think delayed better care? Because, you know, historically that's something that we hear, but obviously it puts, again, more burden on us, especially with the changes happening in the field towards that. So I don't know if any of our patients or patient representative or groups have a sense of that. Do people feel that they had sort of delayed good care in primary care before they were referred on, or do they think that they were handled appropriately?
Got some data about how many practitioners in the US that a atopic dermatitis patient sees. 5, at least. So they go through a GP, an allergist, 3 or 4 dermatologists before perhaps arriving at something satisfactory. So,
okay. So there's some inefficiencies there that might be aided.
Danielle?
I would also like to have a group focus on underserved populations. I must say that amongst the most severe cases that we see, like at my hospital, are the First Nations who come up from up north. You know, their healthcare is under the wing of the federal government, so they can be traveled to our hospital. But they're the worst cases I ever saw, and certainly they are underserved. So there was a program for primary care physicians working in those areas that would be really helpful, and not only in the outreach areas, but also in the cities. Some people with social economic poverty are really very severely affected sometimes with atopic dermatitis.
I think there's probably tremendous variability in different countries about that. But I think in the US and Canada, there's both a need, but also an opportunity, because we know the data shows that there are patients who are remarkably underserved, and we can probably use that. You know what I mean? There are people who are interested in evening things out and might support initiatives specifically focused to people who are underserved. We have, our data on black patient atopic dermatitis in the United States is really pretty impressive in terms of them having worse disease, and so there's good reason to do specific outreach.
I would say also that in France, for example, we have quite a large number of dermatologists. It's getting down and down and down. We have less and less dermatologists, but we have something like 4,000 dermatologists. But most of them are not very interested in chronic diseases. So it's not the gold standard to meet a dermatologist, because you can meet several dermatologists who are not very interested in AD, and it would delay the right management.
I just wanted to add, from the UK point of view, so the vast majority of eczema patients would just be seen in primary care by a GP, and it can be hugely frustrating for patients. They feel like they're just going round and round in circles for years. Just try another emollient, try another steroid, and I think it just leads to a bit of a mistrust with the medical professionals, because they just don't feel that they're getting anywhere. They can't get to see a dermatologist, and it can have significant problems. I was speaking to a young person, she was 18 recently, and this was her experience with her dad going to the GP when she was young, round and round, couldn't get a referral to dermatology, and she ended up being diagnosed with depression. Because her skin just wasn't under control. Yet she felt that the doctor, because she wasn't referred to dermatology, she felt that the doctor was saying to her, your skin is mild. But for her, it was absolutely horrendous. And she just couldn't cope with life, and she was depressed. And it wasn't until eventually, in her teenage years, she was referred to dermatology, and they were able to get on top of her skin. And she was able to admit that her depression was linked to her eczema. But she felt she couldn't voice that, because just being seen at the GP level, she felt the underlying message was that your skin wasn't severe. So I think it can have a huge impact on patients when they are just seen in primary care and not referred to dermatology. And the research, some of the research that our organisation's done has shown that when patients are just seen in primary care, they really don't understand their condition, they don't understand how to treat their condition. But once they get to dermatology, if they can get through that barrier, they start to understand their condition much more. And it's there that they get access to maybe a eczema treatment plan, and they start to really understand their condition much more. So I think it is a really big problem, the education at GP level.
Yes. If we had a GP in the room, we don't have a GP in the room, he would probably say, okay, but I won't be, let's be realistic, I won't be a dermatologist. I won't become a dermatologist. I have 100 of diseases to take care of. So it's your duty to give us some red flags, to say, okay, I'm seeing a patient with an AD, I see this red flag on this patient, I refer this patient. So it's our duty as dermatologists to teach GPs in a very simple way, not to learn a GP to become a dermatologist, but just to select patients to be referred.
We did a program a few years ago, Sebastian and Jean-Francois came out with Peter, which was sponsored by the foundation for, I think, 30 or 40 people, but we had 110 come, so the rest, everyone paid on their own, and there was this incredible mixture of primary care doctors, and then pediatric dermatology specialists, and it was just, it was there was a thirst for knowledge. So I think if you offer education, and it might be compact education, but also with the eye towards what they should know and then when they should refer. I have a question about nurse training, because I think that I've seen nurse training in the regional centers, and they're training their own nurses, but I don't know if there have been good experiences and by nurse I should say allied professionals other than physicians, because we also have nurse practitioners and physician assistants in the U.S., for instance, who would also be a target of it. Have people had successful programs engaging them? If not, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to do that. Yeah, Peter, you've had some experiences with pharmacists and also, but you think targeting physician assistants and nurses or MAs, do you think they would be interested? Or do you think they're just too busy to care?
No, I definitely think they're a great group to target, because we know that many times they have more time to actually spend with the patients. So it probably is time extremely well spent, and maybe part of this toolkit and part of OpenEd where we can build tools for other practitioners and allied practitioners to be able to mine those resources as well. I think it's a great point.
It's always difficult to guide on nurse training, because it's very dependent on the healthcare system in different countries. We saw that in Belgium it was something we don't, like in France, we don't have physician assistant, we don't have nurse practitioners, we have nurse specialists. So it's different in each country. But what I would say as a physician, that 10 years ago I would say that nurses could add something to the management, to my work with the patients. But now, I would say that I could add something to nurse management. Sometimes, because sometimes it's not useful. Nurse management alone is enough and is good enough to best management. So it changed completely in my perspective. It completely changed in 10 years. I think nurses that are trained, that are specialized, are able to take care of patients in the first place, and it's very good.
I think that nurses are really essential in TPA program, and in fact they spend more time with us than the doctors, and they are very human, and whatever resources you create, very useful, whatever content, Q&A, sexy content that we can imagine to educate patients, if you don't have the human meeting that makes you want to change as a patient and makes you want to trust medicine or what medicine can bring you, the nurses are very essential in this point, because I remember when I went through TPA, the one that I was seeing on a daily basis were the nurses, and they were sharing the tips that we are craving for, like with the sun you need to put sunscreen, and if you need to put makeup you can do this, and don't forget to put spray water compress. Or they were giving tips that no doctors had time to share with me. So the nurses, they are so precious, and we saw that with the black tea yesterday or whatever. Those kind of tips are the most precious because they empower the patients, and that's what we need. So if doctors can help the nurses manage the time to do that, it will be so, so useful.
So, yeah.
I just wanted to, sorry, is that okay? I just wanted to comment on training with nurses, because some years ago we had a training session with 80 nurses, the kind of nurses who come into the homes of newly born children. And they had sort of a concept that if the child was very dry, it should just keep dry and then heal itself. And we now know we have this, we studied greatly that prevention of atopic dermatitis with emollients is maybe not the right way to do it, but if the child is very dry, you should put emollients on. So I think we sort of changed a little bit in our region regarding this point, and I think it's important we interact with them because they give so much advice to new mothers. And,
I do think that Sebastian brought up there needs to be engagement and re-engagement just because as I said in my talk, the field has moved on. Even the comorbidities, we didn't discuss comorbidities here, but it creates more burden upon us, to try to get better care. But there's a lot of education that has to be pushed up, sideways, and down. What's the best way to do that? Which raises the question here of, this meeting is a tremendous meeting, right? I thank Jean-Francois, I thank George, I thank the foundation because it's so special for us to work out these issues and to hear what best practices and innovations are being done. But they're becoming increasingly important, but it does raise the question about, as we then go home, how important when's the next time we're going to do this meeting, given that so much is happening in the field? Do we have, local, regional meetings and encourage those, and it's just up to us individually, or do we get together to try to do that? I mean, in the U.S., we've done stuff, but only now and then, just because it's so big, it's hard to look at. And but I do think that there'll be a real need to do that because they both need to make new materials, which we'll be dealing with in the next slide or two, but also just to be able to re-communicate the changes that are happening.
Maybe we could move on the next. I'm sorry because I think we are a little bit late.
Okay.
Okay.
Integration with patients. So this was particularly to get people's responses in terms of interactive devices for patients. So we heard about eczema-wise, and so we with PO SCORAD, for instance, right? That was a severity assessment tool that allowed engagement of patients through a severity assessment tool, but the new version is obviously is different. It's really a integrated platform for patients and their eczema, and then patients and their physicians and their eczema. Eczema-wise, I think doesn't have the physician component, but is attempting to link up with the Eczema Association, a set of tools that they can use to both track their disease and then learn about their disease. And these are highly sophisticated. And then I guess how they roll out and how patients take them up and whether they'll stay with them is some of the big questions that we have.
I think for those who attend the last workshop on PO SCORAD or new PO SCORAD applet, I think we learn a lot from your remark, and we wait for your comments because we need to have your feedback to improve the quality, to improve the. Finally, the goal of this tool is not only to inform people, informing patients, informing doctors, but to help patients and both patient and doctor both. It's a win-win process, in a win-win process. So for that, thank you for the patients who express themselves, and I think at the beginning, we only presented a prototype. You could understand that it was not so simple to do this first step, but we have to now move to another part, and we have 3 other goals. I'm sorry, but probably the first workshop I missed the one slide, but I think it is really programmed, and I think we need your feedback. So please, you will receive the conclusion of your comments. And now it's a beginning of an adventure. Thank you.
I think that with technology, we've often faced this question of there's so much richness in the material that you can make, and then the question is, how practical is it? We face this in the world. When we converted to electronic medical records, we face this all the time. I can come up with incredibly detailed tools as an intake for rare disease, and if it's incredibly detailed, no one will do it. So it's that trade-off of compact, and then also, let's be truthful, people extinguish their behavior, right? You know, Facebook is out, even Instagram's being taken. You know, people move on to different things, and the question is how defining the best thing for which kinds of patients. It could be that a severe, moderate, severe patient would be happy to be so engaged, and a parent of a mild patient might not have any interest. So, you know, but I think that's the hard part in designing rich systems, is then figuring out if, from a patient perspective, is this something that they love to do. You know. So one of the questions I get, we wrote, how do people stay in touch with patients, especially those who might not come back? I mean, do you have systems in place?
Yeah, that's a question that is linked to the PO-SCORAD proposition, because, you know, in the new version of the PO-SCORAD, the proposition is to have a link, to bridge a link between patients and doctors by sending emails with a sum up of the patient situation between consultations. So how do you feel that, I'm talking to physicians, how do you feel that it could be integrated in your practice to receive patients' news by emails in addition to your classical way of interacting with patients by emails? Is it too much or not? You want more emails?
We have some patients who think it's perfectly fine to send their kids pictures every 2 days on the electronic medical record. It's like, I need to live through the child's eczema, and if all my patients did that, I would have to poke my eyes out.
I think it's challenging to know that, because probably only few physicians will accept to share their own phone call number. I think probably yes, but I think majority of doctors, of not only dermatologists, work in a big with other people, with a secretary, with assistant.
So when they do their AI scan and there are 3, they can just let me know. No, I'm just kidding.
I think it's possible to obtain and to increase the link between the patients, who sometimes wait for 6 months to obtain a rendezvous. And finally, it's with the way of this new PO-SCORAD, I think it could be possible to do that not only versus your physician, but also versus your nurse, versus your pharmacist.
Yeah.
And I think it's or your GP.
To be honest, in our department, the communication between patients and the team are managed by the nurses. Mainly, and it took time. It took a lot of time to manage this mailbox.
Yeah, I think in many centers that's done rather than the physician in the room. So the last point here is an important one, because you know, we have a sense that your tools are always in development, and we're going to need new ones as new drugs get approved, and how we translate into patient language. And I think I mentioned yesterday in my talk, I feel very guilty here that we spent a lot of time redoing our core educational materials for our program, and we put it at the 5th grade level. And I know that patient outcomes are quite good, and patient satisfaction in our multidisciplinary centers very, very positive, but I never asked them what they thought of the training sessions themselves, and now I have to go back and do that. But I guess the question is, what's the best way to engage patients into looking at tools as they're designed to see if they're hitting them right, even though, of course, there's heterogeneity in terms of their knowledge-based education, understanding of disease. But I mean, I almost wonder, do we need like 2 sets, the sort of simplified set, and then a more detailed set that may have more scientific presentation of the advantages and disadvantages of certain medicines.
I think the idea of making tools, shared decision-making tools is brilliant, and I like the idea of Larry when during his talk said that the AD is a flux, it's the dynamic. Knowledge around AD is dynamic, so we can't fix, we can't build a tool that will be the same in 2 years, or in 3 years, or in 4 years, because the landscape will move completely, and we will probably have to develop tools more specific for systemic treatments in the future, for example. So there is a need for that.
Should we move on to adapting tools? So with new treatments and change in understanding, so we need to adapt both, recognize that educational needs might be different, as well as to generate new materials and tools. At the same time, I should say, remember that also we may be defending traditional therapies in the face of pressures from the people who are armed with dollars to promote their new therapies. I think that's partially, internationally, we have to do that, as well as we then translate what we think the best practices are, not just the new ones. So I have a question: whether, you know, is a group meeting like this important for that? I mean, should we not wait another 8 years, or, you know, I mean, not to push the foundation, but and there's other ways other necessarily than the live meeting for us to try to engage to figure out what new tools or best tools are.
Maya?
Why we don't think about the position paper on this topic? I think it's really very, very important, because now it's much easier to the parents to do an injection than to do topical treatment, and much easier to the physician and to the nurses to go through this condition. So I think that it would be really a pity, because we don't have at long term what will be the side effects. We don't know how long we should continue with the treatment, because atopic dermatitis, maybe it regresses by 2 months or 2 years or 3 years. So how we can manage with systemic treatment, while it's much easier to manage with topical treatment. So I think that we should do something in this field.
Yeah, I mean, you've really pointed out the part
I'm afraid about political and economic issues, but I don't mind. I am happy to do it.
Well, that's I think it's marvelous. You know, part of at a meeting like this, right, one of the things that we recognize is what we don't know, you know, and we live with that all the time, especially, you know, as I've said, with infantile atopic dermatitis and early intervention. So when I was with Julie Block, I'm like, yes, you need to keep funding research because we don't know core answers of how long should you treat and how is it going to influence disease over time. So that just shows there'll be a continued, you know, flood of information that we'll have to adapt to as we bring our messaging to patients.
Okay, so I think we are running out of time a little bit, so maybe we could conclude now, or yes, just I think we covered that. Just the sort of should we be patient-centered or physician-centered? We definitely have to move on this binary thing, either physician-centered or patient-centered. Now, I think that we should adapt a trade-off, a balanced situation between physician and patients, so that physician understand more patients, so that patients understand more the problems of physician. And finding the good the tuning of this situation is key for the future.
Well, I'm going to be travel-centered right now.
Yeah.
People may know tomorrow is my 40th anniversary, so it'll be very expensive unless I get home in time. So I apologize for leaving early. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Larry.
Yes, thank you very much, Larry, for your help, because it's not only now, and not only yesterday, but also in the future. Thank you so much. So we probably have at the end of the discussion. Yes. Do you have any questions? Free questions? Free remarks?
Yeah. Any feelings that you want to share, Daniel? Please don't forget to be practical after a meeting like that. Don't forget to keep something practical to come to back home with your team. Somehow it's always tremendous to meet. You're very, very motivated after a meeting like that. But when you come back, you say, okay, I check my emails. I go, okay, when is the next meeting? So let's be realistic. We won't be perfect. We'll never be perfect to start education with patients, but we should not stay on the side of the pool, like Jean-François says. You have to jump on the pool. Daniel?
Yeah, with regards to the binary construction, if you want, of TPE tools, one way that you could get the patient or patient's representative or society's input is to, in the midst of building your tool, at the beginning, if you created like a survey monkey and took the various items and wrote, 1, 2, 3, 4, what is most important for either the patients or the patient's association members or representative, and you would see the balance, in an easy way. An easy monkey survey is very easily done.
Very important to integrate patients in the building process of a tool. Yeah.
I think okay. Just before giving the microphone to our host, I would like to thank you, especially all of us, yes, but especially the foundation, because Eczema Foundation was from more than 20 years gave to the community of first physicians, but now patients, hopefully, a support very well appreciated. I think the difference between a program of educative program proposed by the marketing of a company is working with the foundation. It's work which can be prolonged, and I think we really appreciated that your input is not only a one-shot input, but a long time support. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, dear Jean-François, dear Georges, as the president of Foundation. It's time to close this meeting. When we prepared this closing speech, I wouldn't guess that it was already done yesterday evening. In fact, during the cascade and the very nice dinner we got in fact 3 persons who already closed the Foundation meeting. So Professor Wallenberg, Daniel Marcoux, and Jean-François. So thank you a lot for the leading, because I am director from a couple of months, but I wanted to make a special thanks to Sophie Mary, who is the previous director of Foundation and who led the Foundations for 6 years, correct? So when I arrived on Wednesday, so I knew faces I already known from different congresses because I'm working as medical director within Pierre Fabre company for more than almost 20 years. And in the dermatological field, since 2014. So it was a pleasure, and I used to work as medical director in Aderma, and now I am covering medical direction in dermatology, in pharma, so it means gynecology, ENT, and Aderma, Pierre Fabre Dermatology, and Aven. And more than less, I am leading as well patient centricity in oncology, melanoma, colorectal cancer, and breast cancer. And I should share with you that this meeting here is something really innovative, which is followed, but last meeting was in 2014. But we never did the same in oncology. So you can be really proud and thank for your participation, because it was you who made the success of this meeting. And for me, the success is you. And Sophie Mary, when she prepared this meeting, she made an abbreviation which is called IMEF meetings. And for me, IMEF is not only international, we are in the intercontinental, and I would say it's really many continents who participated. We got questions from Argentina, Peter Leo from US, Larry, we got Africa, Australia, and video Europe, so all continents was really covered. And thanks to you, because you participated, you interacted. I know that Switzerland wants to involve educational pop training in Switzerland, so it was really you who made this meeting successful. The M is not just only a meeting. I would say the M is like a maximum effort, because the foundation team really made a huge challenge to produce this meeting and prepare it for you, because during COVID it was postponed 3 times. And when I saw the last version of scientific program on Tuesday, I saw the 28th version of scientific program. I never saw it. In May, we got a congress in Athens, the Worldwide Congress, and we were in 5 versions. So to tell you how the team really worked, and it's very, I would say, chef-d'oeuvre, very meeting, and you made it successful. The E, IMEF, for me, it's not only education, but it's empathy. Because it was in the slides, spirits, empathy, you needed the patients to interact, the nurses, pharmacists. So yeah, it is something very important. And the F, I would target twice. F like a future, because we have pop training in US, we have a new European study. So it's our future and our future project. So I heard the suggestion about German language, so I got it. And the second F is, I would say, fantastic, because you made this event fantastic thanks to you, thanks to your exchanges. And I would like now to invite really the fantastic foundation team, because I think you met them, you talked to them, but I would like really now to invite them here on the stage to thank you and thank to you all. So the first person I would like to invite here is our digital community manager, Sarah, because you are a permanent foundation member. Yes. So thank you, Sarah. So all TikTok, I think Larry said, well, it's o'clock, wake up, whatever. So she's behind all the digital community. So the second person, and it's true, in February we got nobody to prepare the Congress, is Catherine Bessac. She's working in patient centricity team. So special thanks and our thoughts to Catherine Janda-Coster, who is replaced also by Céline de Carpigny, who really target the program, the interview with you, and prepare all the questions. So we have Delphine Joseph, who is assistant. So as Jean-François said, all the flight tickets, last minute changes, Larry or whatever, so she's behind. So she was really in emergency stage this week. Jean-François, please come with us, because you are not permanent member of foundation, but closely working with us. And I am searching for George. Yes, he's here, perfect. So the president, without president, nothing works. So So time to close. Have a nice flight to back home. Enjoy the summertime and no more COVID because I think for our humor we absolutely need it. Thank you. Bye.